Let me just prepare myself 2 seconds. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all well. We're going to continue with our study, which we started this morning. I was kind of disappointed because there was not many people willing to talk in the morning, so I hope that in the afternoon it will be different. Please, let's share our thoughts. I'm not presenting a study that I have thoroughly prepared or that I've thoroughly understood. I'm just opening up the subject for discussion, because as God's people in this final generation, God has shown us what the final events are going to look like. And 2014 is supposed to be like a parable or an example for us. So if we are to have a better understanding of the history that we are in, then we need to go back to 2014. So please, let's be free to share, interrupt me at any time, raise your hand. If you don't do so, I will assume that you are all okay and that we are following and understanding. So we started off this morning by looking at 2014, looking at the fact that God, in seeking to raise this final generation, God brings a message that is meant to help point us to 2014. So when the Adventist Church went into Laodicean condition in 1863, it is because they put time aside. And they went into darkness, the 126 years of Laodicean darkness, because they didn't have time. Therefore, they didn't have direction. They were just moving around, not knowing where they are going, or what the destination looks like, or how far it was. So in 1989, God begins to open up time by introducing reform lines. The reform lines are really time setting, because what is a reform line? A reform line is just a delineation of events, and those events have time stamps. Therefore, once you begin to deal with reform lines, it means that you are already time setting. Even though as a movement, we didn't understand time until the 2520, we had already been dealing with time the entire time. And so the reform lines come in, and then God introduces Daniel 11:40 to show us that we were at the time of the end. So that is where we can now locate the reform lines in order to understand where we were going and how far it was. And then, of course, the 2520 was opened up, and Elder Paminda was able to predict the Sunday law of 2014. When he did those studies, that Sunday law was considered to be the big Sunday law. But, as the midnight cry opened up and we were introduced to fractals, then we began to understand the whole idea of the different groups that God needed to deal with, and the different Sunday laws that have come into play as a result of understanding fractals. So then we came to understand that the information that God gave us from 1989 to 2014 was to help us understand and accept the date 2014, that in fact it did exist, that was a date of the Sunday law. And then when that date arrived, then God gave us a box, and in that box was labeled Sunday law, and that box we were not allowed to open it until 2018. And now, having opened up that box, expecting to see a Sabbath Sunday issue as the crux of the Sunday law, instead, when that box was opened, the contents proved to be shocking to everyone, which they shouldn't have been, but nonetheless they were. And it created three groups in the movement. Some people immediately left once they had a look at the contents in the box. They felt that this is not what they were expecting, and they proceeded to leave the movement. And then there are those that when the contents were opened up, though the contents were surprising, but those group of people had confidence in God's leading, and they were ready for the Lord to take them to the next point. They had confidence in how the Lord had led them so far, and whatever the Lord revealed in 2018, they were ready to embrace it and continue to grow in the knowledge of the truth, gaining confidence, becoming more and more sealed in the message. But then there is that third group that is very worrying, of people who, when they saw the contents, were not sure what to make of the contents, became confused perhaps, and not sure what to do with the contents, and because they had nowhere else to go, continue on to be in the movement. But God is gracious and patient, because God works with all classes of people. And hopefully, as we continue to study and God's opening up the aspects of the Sunday law concerning time and the contents, that we are going to be more willing to accept what the Lord has revealed to us. And then, as Joshua said, that we will serve the Lord regardless of what others are doing. So I think that in this time, we really need to be making up our minds about what's in the box, because we have run out of time. Now is the time for us to be settled, that we cannot be moved with what's in the box. So we opened up the box. 2018, God sent Elder Tess with the message to show us to show us what's in the box and to help us understand it. And now in 2024, 2025, okay, 10 years later now in the history of the Sunday law, we want to go back to 2014, because that is what's going to give us clarity of what this time period we're in is going to look like. So we started opening up the contents one by one. The first thing was the purging of the Republican Party. The Republican Party had to be cleaned up of all moderates. All those people that were not fully settled as right-wing were removed from the party, because those are the people that were going to block the developments of what was going to bring us to the Sunday law. So they were removed. And a choice had to be made whether the Republican Party was going to subscribe to Trumpism or not. And then now we see that in 2024, the Republican Party evolved to a point where they are now fully settled with the choice that they've made regarding Trump. So in the 2016 election, I want us to understand that the Republican Party was really not fully behind Trump, but now they are fully behind him. And there has been a progression of Trump and the Republican Party, just like a couple who meet and fall in love and go through a period of getting to know each other until they get to a point where they decide that they are meant for each other and they settle in a marriage. So likewise, Trump and the Republican Party have gone through that evolution of growing into each other. And then we looked at this, the second item in the box, and that was how Mitch McConnell blocked Obama from appointing Merrick Garland for the Supreme Court in 2016. And that gap that was created because Obama was blocked from filling it when Donald Trump became president. He filled it with a conservative justice, Amy Coney Barrett, when Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. We know that this is a very wonderful person who was an icon figure for women's rights. And now we are at a point where the Supreme Court has a majority, conservative majority of 6-1. And we saw how now Trump had the opportunity to fill up quite a number of vacancies in the lower courts and in the higher court. The judiciary, therefore, with its conservative interpretation of the law, we know that there's going to be issues with abortion rights, gun rights, and other rights that affect minorities going forward. Yeah, and we see that because of the work of McConnell in making sure that the Supreme Court became more conservative, that was followed by the Dobbs versus Jackson case, in which Roe versus Wade was reversed, and how women's rights have now gone into recession. And we're going to look at this a bit more when we look at the third item in the box, and that's Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dissent of 2014. So in 2014, there was a case, Bowell versus Hobby Lobby. So there's a business called Hobby Lobby stores. They didn't want to provide their employees with contraceptive coverage because they said it was against their religious beliefs. It is like the case of the gay couple that wanted to have a cake made for them, and then the cake shop did not want to bake that cake because they were religiously opposed to same-sex marriages. It's a kind of a similar thing. So Hobby Lobby owners did not want to provide their employees with contraception because it was against their beliefs. So they were taken to court. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court, the case ended up in the Supreme Court, and they ruled in favor of Hobby Lobby, allowing corporations and companies to decide for themselves if they were going to provide contraceptive coverage for their employees. Now, what does this all mean? What all this means is that women employees now don't have to be covered for contraception by their employers. Their employers can always cite religious or cultural objection, and they don't have to provide this service for their employees, which again ties in together with item number 2, in which we are seeing a conservative judiciary system now, which has taken back the rights of women to have control and autonomy over their bodies. And in the morning, we looked at the impact that is going to have on women globally in terms of their biopsychosocial well-being. And this is another aspect, another way of destroying the rights of women. Contraceptives are important for women to prevent unwanted pregnancies. And when women do not have easy access to contraception, then they are forced to carry these babies to term, which becomes a danger to their lives and to the lives of their children, not just because of the pregnancy or the labor that is associated with the pregnancy, but also for the next 18 years trying to raise these children. Their careers are affected, their ability to become financially independent is affected. So when the Supreme Court rules in favor of this conservative view, we can see that in the history of the Sunday Law, we should see more and more the rights of women to control their bodies being taken away and instead controlled by the governments. And we can see that this is a really, really significant way of reversing women's rights. All the work that has been done by the various feminism movements now in reverse gear. So in 2014, when this ruling was made, Ruth Bader Ginsburg published a dissent, although it didn't have much impact. Ginsburg strongly dissented, arguing that the decision undermined women's rights and access to healthcare. She expressed concern that the ruling allowed employers to impose their religious beliefs on employees, potentially opening the door to broader exemption, and that it could harm, individual rights. Her dissent highlighted the importance of separating corporate religious beliefs from employees' health decisions, emphasizing the potential consequences for women's autonomy and equality. I'm sorry, I forgot that we should be translating. I don't know if Futi is here or anyone else that can assist. Should I assume that we are all okay if we can proceed without translation?
We can continue.
Okay. Okay. So we know that our test is equality and is much more gender related than race. Race is an aspect, but the main point of our Sunday law test is equality. So any steps that are taken to take away the rights of women, to enable equality, we can see that this indeed is in line with what we should be expecting to see in the history of the Sunday law. Women's rights are going to be taken away. So what are we going to end up seeing? Many more women going back into the kitchen. Many more women are not able to complete their education. Many more women dying as a consequence of pregnancy and obstetric-related complications. Already you can see in the newspapers that right now women in the US are having to travel long distances looking for states where abortion can be carried out, where they can have easy access to contraception. And this conservative move to drive women back into the homes is going to disempower women. And we're going to see more and more cases of abuse and the misuse of women, and a regression in the advances that have been made in achieving equality. So we can tie this dissent of 2014 to some of the developments in terms of women's rights in the past 10 years. Because you can see 2014 Hobby Lobby versus Burwell, that was an unfavorable passing, which then, can be tied to the Dobbs versus Jackson case of 2022, in which Roe versus Wade was reversed. So you can really see this progression in terms of reversing women's rights. And this is what is leading us into this history of the Sunday Law that started in 2014. Just as a reminder, in the Dobbs versus Jackson, this is a decision that ended federal abortion protection and gave the states the power to regulate. So what does this mean? We all know the United States is made up of 50 states, 50 individual countries which have come together. That's why it's called the United States. It's like you have 50 different countries coming under one big federal government. However, each state or each country has its own president, it has its own legislature, its own judicial system, and it runs quite independently as a country. What makes America really a powerful nation is the fact that these 50 countries united together as a United States, but each country actually is independent. So now what happened in the Roe versus Wade is that each country can pass its own laws on the issue of abortion. Some countries permitted abortion, other countries did not. States. However, now with Roe versus Wade comes the law from the federal government, the highest government, to instruct the states that they can't just do what they want, to bring all women under the protection of the federal government. So even if a state says we don't legalize abortion, but that woman is protected by the federal law of Roe versus Wade. Now, when this was reversed in 2022, it now means that the federal government is no longer going to protect these women's rights. They're going to leave it to the states to decide whether abortion is legalized or not. So you are finding in the United States, some states are permitting abortion and some states are not. So if you're a woman and you find yourself in a state which does not permit abortion, you have to run around and look for a state which can accommodate your need. And more of the states are choosing to abolish abortion. So that is what transpired in 2022. The idea that women can no longer easily access reproductive services and their rights. It has it manifests as a factor that is contributing to much morbidity and mortality around pregnancy. Many doctors are afraid now, clinicians and physicians are afraid to administer to help women, and the situation is escalating. So we are entering into the Sunday Law history, seeing that women's rights are being reversed, and it is left now to the states to decide whether women can control their bodies or not. What else was found in the box was item number 4, which is the rise of Modi. Modi is the Prime Minister of India. And the reason why Elder Tess highlighted what was happening in India, what happened in India in 2014, is because, if I'm not mistaken, India now has the highest population in the whole world. It is supposed to be a democratic country. So being a country that has a huge population, it means that whatever happens in India is going to impact on the world somehow in a significant way. So in 2014, we saw the rise of Hindu nationalism. What is Hindu nationalism? Does someone want to share their thoughts? Just for interest's sake, as of 2023, India has overtaken China to be the most populous country in the world. It has an estimated population of 1.5 billion people. So whatever happens in India will affect the world simply because of that huge population. But what is Hindu nationalism? Does anyone know what Hindu nationalism is all about?
Hey, hello, LDT.
Mm,
Let me give it a try.
right.
So, yeah, Hindu nationalism. First of all, I think Hinduism it's a religion, and now they are going to be this nation that is run by the principles of Hinduism. So they are the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He became that figure. It's just like when you look at the United States with Donald Trump becoming that figure that represents Protestants, that those conservative Protestants that are against um, other religions in etc., for example. So I think it's that kind of a nation run by Hinduism. They believe in Hinduism.
Yes, you're right, Tato. Thank you very much. Just to elaborate on your answer, just like the MAGA movement, why do we have the MAGA movement in America? Because Trump is driving the narrative that America has lost its power because of immigration, women's rights, a weak economy, blah, blah, blah. Let's make America great again. Let's throw out the immigrants. Let's leave the UN. Let's come out of this multipolar world and focus on building America to make us great again. What makes us great again is us, the Americans, and our culture and our heritage. Blah, 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 blah. And then you hear the exact same thing in India, because then the Indians are saying in India, this guy Narendra Modi comes up as a politician saying new things, because essentially India was supposed to be a country that is diverse and that is accommodative and liberal. In India, you have Hindus and you have Muslims and you have Christians. Of course, the vast majority of people there are Hindus, but there's a large proportion of Muslims in that country. And you will see that there's a huge work of persecuting Muslims in India. And so the narrative in India is that before colonialism came, before the British colonized India, India used to be a great civilization. So Narendra Modi comes with this narrative as a politician to say, let us build India again. Let us take India back to its greatness. And the only way we can do that is by re-articulating India's national identity as a Hindu country. So what does that mean? It now means that the minorities who are Muslims and other Christians and other groups are now going to be minorities who are not covered by this narrative. The idea is that what made India great before was Hindu culture. And what is going to make India great again is Hindu culture. And actually, if you do a study, if you do a research into what has been happening in India since 2014, you find that India is very, very fast, at a fast pace, advancing technologically, financially. It is becoming a global financial power, a global technological power. And all of this is attributed to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's make India great again through this narrative of promoting Hindu nationalism. So in 2014, the BJP is the party that Modi belongs to. It achieved a sweeping victory, capitalizing on promoting economic reform, good governance, return to the glory of India's past, right? We're going to go back to making India great again. And how we are going to go do that is through economic reforms and good governance. And so in 2014, after this victory, the Modi government has implemented several policies that align with its Hinduva ideology. Examples include stringent measures regarding cow protection. You know, the cow is sacred in India, which have sometimes escalated in communal tensions and drafting of legislation like the Citizenship Amendment Act. So India today is a vastly different country than it was 10 years ago. Since Modi took over power, it has become the world's fifth largest economy. Tens of millions of people have been lifted out of poverty, and it is becoming a critical partner for United States as opposed to China. At the same time, Modi has overseen a crackdown on criticism. He is suppressing the press, academic freedom, and opposition politicians. And most importantly, he has pursued legislation that makes it difficult for Muslims to participate in democratic activities in the country. So he's suppressing the press. He is suppressing the minority Muslims. And that is the strategy that he's using to do what? To make India great again, to build the Indian economy. So people are being lifted out of poverty. Life is really working out for them, and they are likely to continue supporting Modi. In fact, they are saying that he might win the next election to rule for another 5 years. So we can see that make America great again narrative in India, the world's biggest, most populous country. I don't know if this is this point about India, if it is triggering any thoughts in your minds.
I ended you.
Mm.
So coming back to when you look at India, it's known to be a democratic country. But
Yes.
in this, when you look at it in the surface, you can see all these things of voting and so on and so forth. But in the background, you have this PJP or the prime minister who's acting up like the way Narendra Modi is doing. So, like I don't know where there's this article that I was reading that you would see the comparison between on how Narendra Modi is actually shifting India and making it to look as a democratic country, but it's been run in an autocratic way. Um, they have the elections, or because many people they tend to focus to elections as to show that a country is actually democratic. But when you look at who is allowed to vote, you will see it's only certain people and other people are being denied the right to vote. So it's similar to how the United States has with the how it has managed to also shift in that similar direction on when time comes, other people, they are going to be denied voting. There are certain people who are going to be voting, and others are going to be denied. Other people will be having more rights more than other people. So with 2014, the rise of Modi, you can be able to see how Donald Trump's move as well in 2024. It's similar when it comes to also this big country that it's known for democracy, but only in the surface, but at the background, it's an autocratic country, or it's actually ruling in with the rules of dictatorship, just like Putin is doing, or so on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. And thanks for that input. Yes, final generation.
Hello?
Go ahead, Milton.
Okay. So what's also interesting with the example of India, especially when you look at the recent studies which Elder Paminda did highlighting how the fulfillment of Daniel 11 verse 41, like the effect of the king of the north overflowing, be it a nation or nations. We've seen the element of it happening within each and every state. Like in the United States, it's the work being carried out by the Republicans or the GOP, having that element of destroying the institutions which were fundamentally created for a different service. And you see it playing out in all countries, like be it China, Russia, with even India. And I think it's a striking similarity which we see from 2014, that it's not like the way we have literalized that one country will do something from external and impose things on other countries, but it's all happening from within each country, having this element of far extreme right ideologies. And it's just interesting that we can trace it from all the countries which started to change, especially from 2014.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that point. I think that when any country isolates itself or from other countries and say they want to make themselves great, I think that that is a very patriarchal mindset of wanting to make one great, because in order for them to be great, it means that others cannot be great. If we are handling a message of equality, we should be able to see right through this kind of satanic mindset. Because even when you look at the actions that these countries have to take in order to make themselves great, is they have to start with issues like immigration. They have to oppress minorities. And those democracies cannot continue to be democratic because the rights of the minorities are not protected. And that's the difference between a pure democracy and one that isn't. In a pure democracy, which is also problematic, you will have a majority rule and the minority are not protected. The Republican ideology of the United States, I'm not referring to Republican Party, but the Republican idea in the birth of the United States was really embedded in the idea of protecting minorities, that all citizens will have equal rights, whether they belong to a majority group of people or not. And so whenever you see the minority rights being taken away, you know that democracy is not, you know that this is a march towards authoritarian rule. And it's really usually associated with this idea of a country wanting to be great. Because greatness can only come at the expense of other countries. At least greatness in the context of the global world as we know it. So now with the US pulling away from all other countries because it wants to recover from what it thinks is a downslide, is what really drives it into authoritarian, autocratic rule. And we see that happening in India. And India has really achieved great things economically speaking. I mean, who wouldn't in Africa right now want a government that is going to lift people out of poverty? And you're going to have a group of people that have benefits from an autocratic government because it's beneficial for them, but it's oppressing other people. The Muslims are being oppressed in India for the benefit of Hindus who would be happy with this government that is authoritarian to another group of people. So while their lives are being improved, it's at the expense of other people's lives. And I think the whole gospel here at the end of the world is that I need to be able to see that if my life is getting better, it's at what cost? Because essentially, we should see each other as equal. And what benefits I should be reaping from a system should be benefits someone else is reaping. So you can see the selfishness behind this kind of thinking of making India great again, that is compromising a certain group of people in that country. And I think that as the United States goes deeper into this make America great again mindset, other countries, other so-called democracies around the world are probably likely to copy this. We're going to see that, you know, at the waymark, which we have identified as the worldwide Sunday law, the rights of minorities truly being trampled down to make countries great again. Okay, so Modi's government has implemented several policies that align with its Hinduva ideology. And the legacy in 2014 is evident in the current political landscape. The push for a what? A homogeneous Hindu national identity, which is deeply influenced by debates on education, minority rights, and national identity. So it's all about this homogeneous national identity that they are trying to create. And if it's homogeneous, hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry to disturb. I just wanted to comment on what you said earlier on. When you look at India and how it is succeeding, even though it's participating in discrimination and discriminating the minority, and you look at what Trump is doing, what the Republicans are doing, I feel like with them being in power, we'll get to a point where America is increasing economically. Just everything is just thriving, even though minorities are being suppressed. And that will make people to continue to vote Trump again, to continue to put him. Because I think when we look at majority of the time when you look at Sunday law or our idea of Sunday law is just a country that is miserable, where everyone is just terribly miserable. We have that mindset. But also when you look at this, you're introducing another view whereby we have a country that is discriminating other people, that is just treating other people badly, but it's also striving economically. They have opportunities that they didn't have. So they'll use that thing that, okay, because we did this and we discriminated against these people, we're not thriving. So this means that we should continue this way for us to thrive economically. So instead of seeing America falling, like just falling, we're gonna see a different falling whereby it's falling democratically and all that, but economically and all that, from what I'm seeing, you get to see where it's increasing in power. People are getting more employed. All those things that were not there before, you'll see them now, and people will not get confused on whether is Trump doing a good job. So I think, yeah, that was just what I wanted to point out, doing a contrast between India and the United States.
Thank you for so much for that point. Very, very good point. That in fact we might see a recovery in the American economy, because that's the whole agenda of Trump, is to build the economy, drill more oil, take away all these restraints regarding the climate, take out these immigrants who are depending on the system and sucking the system dry, so that real Americans will benefit from the resources of their own country without having to worry about these foreigners. Yeah, we might see that the economy growing and improving as they turn inward to focus on themselves and forget about the rest of the world, the rest of the needs of the world. Because is it that other people don't matter? We can really see that how inequality plays out, why God's message is about that, and why this is the Sunday law. And really, you can see nothing about Sabbath Sunday, but the issues that are evolving around us concern governance and the treatment of other people, especially minority rights. Right. Thank you all for your contribution. Let's continue to share. Number 5, item number 5 in the box, of course, 2014 was the annexation of Crimea. It was the invasion of Ukraine, and following that annexation, Russia militarized the peninsula and warned against any outside intervention. So why was this significant? I mean, what should we be expecting to see? We should be expecting to see developments, and we were not failed, because in 2022, 8 years after the annexation of Crimea, you see another invasion on the eastern border of Ukraine by Russia. And this move has had lasting impact on international relations, leading to a series of economic sanctions against Russia and fundamentally altering the geopolitical landscape of Europe. So I don't know how we are viewing these developments. And the fact that now Donald Trump seems to be friendly with Putin, but we know prophecy tells us the king of the south is going to die, and therefore, even though we might be seeing a recovery in this relationship, but actually it's going to prove very detrimental to the king of the south. So from 2014, we come to 2022, and now we are in 2025, and we are seeing a progression in the death of the king of the south. When we come to further points, we will see that it is the case. And number 6 is the paper counterfeit equality. I don't know if we remember the Pan-Amazonian Ecclesial Network, which is a network with 1,000 organizations from the Amazon. It was developed by the papacy to create a development in the, they really wanted to, some kind, it's a counterfeit equality. They were saying that the traditional communities in the Amazon were being neglected. So they were trying to create an environment in which they could begin to recognize these communities within the Amazon. For the common good of humanity, feeling that these people have for a long time been left out of the discussion, left out of church activities, and just relegated there in the jungle where they live without any attention being given to them. And so the papacy comes up with this plan to begin to interact with these communities and bring them on board. And in fact, try to make Catholicism appealing to these cultural, with these communities within the Amazon. It looks like the papacy is taking steps to cover some gaps and bring about equality, but it's a counterfeit equality, because the actual one that God is trying to address is with respect to gender. I don't know what your thoughts are on this one.
Yes, so actually when you look at the papacy from its history to the current leadership, the change of Pope after Benedict resigned, I think there's such a contradiction that even the people who knows the history of Catholics, when they look at the current Pope and his progressive counterfeit mindset, it would look like they've reformed it. Any religion or any organization, any country can feel safe to have their contribution and not able to distinct the principle they have embedded. Like when we talk of the fifth kingdom being dead and then resurface, the ideology coming back, no one would tie any threat to their ideas to the troubles that we are going to see re-emerging in a different form, especially through United States. I think it's such a striking contradiction that deceives and make people fall prey not to use history correctly and identify the problems we're facing, that they can be traced to the same things that they've done in the past.
Exactly. And what this thing is all about, really, to shed some more light on it, is that you have these countries in the Amazon, countries like Brazil, Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia. In these countries, there is groups of indigenous people who by and large live in the Amazon. The Amazon is the rainforests over there. So the thinking was that these communities, it was time to incorporate them and prioritize their rights as groups of people. The papacy attacked the governments to say the governments were focusing so much on economic growth and abandoning these human rights, violating their rights, these indigenous populations. And so it's trying to reverse all of this work. And it sounds good on paper, really it does. But in essence, first of all, it's avoiding the real issue. Number two, it's a very cultural drive. And we know that in our Sunday law history, the union is not between church and state, it's between culture and state. So this work that the papacy is trying to do is to actually promote the cultures of the indigenous people within the Amazon forest. So for a surface reader, it looks good. But in fact, as Milton is saying, it's a contradiction of who the papacy really is. And also the fact that they are avoiding the real issue, which is gender equality. We know that even when they're promoting feminism, their version of feminism is the cultural one. So culture becomes the hinge point at which the papacy is working, which is the same thing exactly that Modi is doing in India with the Hindu religion. So that is why, as we behold these issues, you can really see that the issue is not about religion, it's about culture. Because all cultures agree with patriarchy. And that is what is going to unite the world against God's people. This is the culture of patriarchy, which we see the papacy here promoting one way or the other. You could say indirectly. And then item number 7 is climate change. Climate change is a big one. In 2014, that was a turning point in climate change. Why? Because in 2014 was recorded as the hottest year up to that point that had ever been recorded globally. It's also said that there was a report that was released that confirmed that human activities, mainly the burning of fossil fuels, were the ones altering the climate. And a couple of sessions ago, we talked about the executive orders that Trump started spewing out so rapidly, one after the other. And one of those was involving was the one about burning of fossil fuels, how he plans to scale up the drilling of oil. And yet in 2014, this idea of burning fossil fuels, driving cars with petrol and diesel, these are the human activities that are destroying the climate. And what's most... Okay, let me pose this as a question. How does this impact on equality? Climate change, basically heat waves, storms, floods, droughts, rising temperatures. How does this impact on equality?
Okay. So when it comes to the global approach, which was being progressively formulated to address the consequences in the past 10 years, it was also highlighted that the bigger economies are the ones who have contributed much in escalating the effects. So in terms of the size of contributions, the big economies were supposed to be responsible. So for an example, when the United States is a leader who disagrees with climate change, which means he's running away with his bigger contribution and denying the effects that they've caused, and even escalating the problem by going things that are causing more problems. So that idea of going back again, making America great again, each country can adopt the same principle and continue with the routine of economic growth they have pursued in the past, ignoring the reality of climate change. But when it comes to the effects now, it's the poor nations and the poor minorities in communities which suffer the worst. And usually it falls on women and children in poor countries who are the recipients of those disasters. And they won't be able to recover usually whenever those things happen. So it becomes a fire and effect which you can trace to the responsibility which governments have to take on the issue of climate change.
Very right. is that the biggest contributors to climate change are the industrialized countries. And the biggest victims of climate change are the underdeveloped countries. So whatever those people are doing recklessly, making America great again, making India great again, building their economies, pushing themselves to the limit to develop and build and grow, it is what is destroying the climate. And now when we start having floods and earth and all these environmental disasters, the people that are most affected are the poorest people that are found in developing countries. People who, when they are hit with a flood, they have nowhere to go. If a tsunami hits in the US, that's an advanced country. They have all the systems and resources in place to provide for the victims of those floods. But if the same thing happens in Africa, in Mozambique or in Sudan, you can imagine where there is no resources, what is going to happen to those people. And yet they are not responsible. They are by and large not responsible for the climate change. This is really the most painful aspect about climate change, is that those people who are suffering from its effects, truly suffering from its effects, are not the ones responsible for creating the problem. So it disproportionately affects the most disadvantaged people in developing countries. And whether you're in advanced or developing countries, it affects women and children more because it amplifies their vulnerabilities. Imagine a flood in Mozambique, how it's going to affect the people most affected are going to be the women. Just in terms of resource access, health, safety, imagine you're a woman and you're 9 months pregnant and there's a huge flood. What are the chances, or you're breastfeeding? What are the chances of such a woman escaping unscathed? So the displacement, the migrations, climate change-induced disasters and resource scarcities force people to migrate. And when women and children are forced to migrate, they not only thrown into hard times, they become victims of abuse, rape, and all those kinds of things, violence, exploitation, trafficking. And women often depend more on natural resources for their livelihoods, and climate change related problems like droughts in Africa, floods, resource depletion. Where is that leaving women who are depending on the land to survive, just to survive? Access to water, access to food, fuel, all the workload and the economic hardships, not to mention the diseases that come out of these disasters, waterborne diseases, food insecurities. Yeah. So the impact is on marginalized groups. Those marginalized groups include women, poor people in developing countries, indigenous populations, people with disabilities. So we're going to see more and more of this in our history, because America has decided that they are going to drill more. And they've also passed an executive order to not invest in wind energy. So while they are running around trying to become great again and overpower China, what's going to be happening to the environment? And where is that going to be manifested? And who is it going to affect the most? So an America that does not care about other people, that's the dispensation that we are in.
Yeah,
Right now,
a good example, sorry to cut you.
No, it's fine.
The good example is the fires which burned LA and other cities recently. You are going to find out that it was never a crisis, even reaching to a global scale where there has to be donations or helping those rich people who lost their homes. Actually, just like the mindset of the antediluvians after the flood, even insurance companies, technological fire engineers are even coming up with corrections to say if they are to rebuild those cities, they can even build better structures which will not be burned down and all. And they are going to recover. I think right now, those people, there are some who might be impacted really, but most of them, it's not like a crisis. And if it had happened in a poor country, right now it will be still on top of the headlines. But I think life is going back to normal. And that is why even in a crisis of those major like
Mm.
natural disasters, the scale is not the same, even when it comes to the response to those disasters. It depends who it hits. And that's where
Mm.
equality is trying to lay a foundation for everyone to get a fair recovery.
Mm. And mind you, Milton, the US has cut off aid. Hmm? So just imagine they've cut off aid. They are increasing their activities that are going to affect the environment. More disasters are going to affect people, and there will be less aid, external aid, to assist those countries in those instances. Hmm?
Yeah.
So yeah. Global warming remains a critical concern. Temperatures continue escalating.
Technology.
Yes.
I'm sorry to also disturb you, but I was
No.
just saying that
Mm.
they are making problems and saying, you can deal with them yourselves. Like they're creating more problems in the world. And instead of helping to solve them, they're saying, yeah, you can take care of yourself, even though they know that they can. Like them moving from the whole aid thingy and wanting to have more industrial things. It's just two things that don't even make sense. Because how are you affecting the world but not wanting to actually help change it? It doesn't really make sense. So they're saying we're gonna do this. It's all about me. It's all about what the Republicans want. It's all about me, what I want. I don't care what it affects you. And I feel like that's the whole motto of the Republicans or Trump or the America right now, where you say that it's all about me, how I feel. I don't care how you feel. It's all about me, me, me. That's the whole thing about America and that where we are right now. It's all about me. As long as I'm financially well, as long as I'm living in a country that have industrial things, as long as I'm living in a country where we can
Mm.
help ourselves, it doesn't really matter if other countries can't, if the decisions that are made by the president affect them. It doesn't matter. All that matters is me. I think that's also what's happening there, and that's the biggest problem I see in America right now. Because they'll say, yeah, other people are being discriminated upon, but well, Trump is really helping me financially, so I'm gonna vote for him again. It's all about
Yeah.
me,
Yes.
not about other
Mm.
people. Yeah,
Exactly.
thank you.
Exactly. And the golden rule is really being trashed there completely. And obviously the only person that matters right now is the American. If you're woe unto you if you're not an American. Mm? In other words, other human beings across the globe are of no value. So here at the end of the world, God comes to us with a message to say every human being is of value, but we have satanic forces going around removing humanity from human beings and reducing them to animal status. Because if, for example, if Africa, we are not already poor enough with all the aid that has been coming, when this aid is withdrawn and those who are damaging the environment escalate their activities, is exactly what you're saying. Other people are not of value. And in opposition, God is saying we need to see humanity in each and every single person. Every human being is of value wherever they are, in whatever condition that they are in. And we see that in America, basically the two-party system. You've got the Democrats on the left, Republicans on the right, Democrats wanting to be part of this multipolar world, working together with other nations to solve the problems of the world. This is the mindset that we are supposed to have globally, all of us working together, solving each other's problems, lifting each other out of difficulties, sharing ideas, sharing resources, uplifting those who are down, doing research, discovering medications, drugs, treatments to solve the problems of the world. But then you see the Republican Party on the right pulling back. These conservative mindsets are always tend to be very selfish, self-centered. It's all about America. It's all about India. It's all about China. Those kinds of mindsets that isolate one country from the others. And that is what we are seeing more and more in these activities of Trump and of Trumpism. So what happened? On Inauguration Day, Trump withdrew the United States from the Paris Agreement, climate agreement, making it the only nation to walk away, right? They're pulling away. The whole world is meeting together, trying to solve the problem of climate, identifying fossil fuel usage as a significant contributor, trying to look into alternative energy sources. And the US is pulling away from that while they're hyping up their drillings. Mr. Trump has frozen funds appropriated by Congress for clean energy projects. Take the money away. He has stopped the approval for wind farms on public land. He has fired thousands of federal workers, dismantled programs aimed at helping polluted communities, and scrubbed references to climate change from numerous federal websites. Isn't it Trump believes in conspiracy theories, and conspiracy theorists believe that climate change is a conspiracy theory. So if they believe that it's a conspiracy theory, then they are not going to put any efforts or any money or pour any resources into keeping the environment clean. And of course, the last person on their minds is some pregnant woman in Mozambique. Who cares about that person? Who cares if there is a flood there? Who cares if that woman is going to give birth and have access to good health care and vaccines for the baby? Nobody cares about that. So he has no need for a big government. He has no need for all these federal workers who are working in climate change-related organizations and infrastructures to protect the environment for the benefit of all humanity. I don't want to keep us here anymore because I know we easily get tired, but let's deal with item number 8 and then we'll continue some other time. And that's Gamergate. So what happened in Gamergate? So there is this woman. So Gamergate was an organized online harassment campaign that started in 2014 and it persisted into 2015, targeting women in the video game industry. Mm-hmm. They are misogynistic entities that are against feminism, diversity, and progressiveness in the video game culture. There's a lot of gender discrimination, unequal pay, harassment, and retaliation for complaining. So if you're a woman a person of color in this video game industry, things are really, really tough. And how it started is really misogynistic and patriarchal when a woman programmer was accused of sleeping with a director so that she could have her games, whatever, had her work recognized. She was accused by her ex-boyfriend. And then he went and on social media and he said a lot of things about her in this regard, trying to insinuate that women are not intelligent enough to make it in the video gaming industry unless they have to be sleeping. If there is a woman who's successful, she must be sleeping with the boss. She must be giving sexual privileges to someone in power, because women are not innately capable of achieving. So there is this whole Gamergate thing that started up. Ultimately, the stage for radical right-wing violence was set for the 2021 attacks on the US Capitol. So there's that direct connection between Gamergate and January 6th. So what began as a backlash to a debate about how video games portrayed women led to an internet culture that ultimately helped sweep Donald Trump back into the presidency. There are some people suggesting these are all the facts, some of the factors. Many factors led Donald Trump back into the presidency, but this was one of them. Gamergate and this whole anti-feminism online harassment movement of men's rights, all of that that feeds into that my radical mindset that led to the January 6th activities. Yeah. So now we're not talking about anymore, these movements working underground to promote right-wing mentality, but we really have Donald Trump back in the presidency, back in the White House, the most powerful political office on the planet, driven by this kind of mindset and giving birth to what we are now describing as the manosphere. And we know Donald Trump to be very patriarchal, very much sexist, he believes strongly in the strong man, that strength is in the hands of a man. And this is the man that is leading the world's greatest country. With everything that we have looked at, with the work that has been done in the judiciary, making sure the Supreme Court is majority conservative and the entire judicial system there, reversing women's rights, having a very misogynistic president in the White House who does not care about climate change and how it's affecting other countries, who is withdrawing aid, who is promoting this patriarchal global worldview. So that is just 8 of the 25 items that Elder Tess put into that box. We can look at the others some other time, but for now, I think we will end it here because I don't want to exhaust us. Any contributions, any further questions?
Yeah, it's interesting that when you see the pattern of how we understood the fractals and the significance of 2014, in as much as we mark the arrival of the test of the Sunday Law 2024, you can see that 2014 is all the significant components of the Sunday Law, which at a worldwide scale, you could see each nation having that tendency of regressing into that Gadal mindset of uplifting themselves at the expense of others. And
Yeah.
it has just been progressive all through. And 2014 still stands to confirm all those things which we are marking in 24.
Yeah, and I think what we should do is just to go back to that study and identify all those points and then try to trace their development in the past 10 years. In as many countries as can be. But this is just what the Sunday law is going to be like. It's a reversal of the achievements of the feminism waves, all the advances. Now we're going to come here at the end of the world and have all those advances reversed. And I know that we would like to see that this is more about race, but it's really more about gender. And if you look carefully, each of these 8 points is touching on gender. It affects gender somehow. Whether you're looking at the climate change or you're looking at Gamergate, it's about women's rights. If you're looking at the paper counterfeit, it's a diversion from true gender equality. If you're looking at the invasion of Ukraine, we know how, and this is just a loose connection, somebody might have a stronger connection, but we know how the King of the South views women. India's crackdown, this is a very cultural community led by this very patriarchal man, Modi, promoting a very patriarchal culture and trying to build a huge economy using the ideology of this patriarchal culture to say that this is what's going to make India great again. This is what's going to make India prosperous and wealthy, is if we go back to tradition. So that means women are going to go back to the bottom of the food chain. If you're looking at Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dissent, it was all about women's rights, and Dobbs and Jackson following later. If you're looking at Mitch McConnell blocking Obama's judicial appointments, it's so that the courts will be filled with conservative judges. So you turn up there and it's a case on abortion, it's a case on minority rights, it's a case on gun rights, whatever. You know that this conservative judge is going to interpret the law in a certain way, which is not favorable to minority vulnerable groups. So the rights of women again being trampled down. Of course, Trump himself being elected as president and the work that was done in purging the Republican Party. Yeah, this is what Sunday law looks like. And yet we are in the history and Adventism has failed. They're still running campaigns teaching people about the Sabbath. It's the only message that they've got. And so I think that if we are not yet certain of where we are, let us be established. Let us be established. Let us be convinced in our minds that this is the truth. This is how the Sunday law is going to look like. Let us be established in the message, so established that we cannot be moved, so that we are sealed. So if there are no other hands, questions, comments, we can close in prayer.
Hello, Elder D.
Yes.
I don't know if you already made this point in the morning because we're having network problems, but I was just looking at number 2, and I was looking at the Republicans' hypocrisy when it comes to appointing Obama wanting to appoint Garland. They block him because they say it's about to be there's about to be an election, and there are over 270 days, I think, if I saw that correctly. And they block him from appointing Garland. But when it comes to Trump appointing Barrett, there are only over 47 days before the election, but they allow they allow Trump to appoint Barrett. So that hypocrisy, they use the rules to make them suit themselves, to make them suit them.
Exactly. And if we
I
don't
was
know
just
what
thinking,
to,
how
ahead.
did the Democrats let that happen? Because it's the same situation. How do you let people play you like that? Like, were they not in the game? Were they not noticing just how these people just manipulate rules to make them suit themselves?
And
That's my comment.
and that's yeah, and that's the thing, Kenya. Thanks for that. That's the thing. The thing is that the Republicans have been over the years very deliberate about their actions. They don't just do things. They plan ahead, they scheme, they manipulate, they plan and execute. Whereas the Democrats, who are standing for the right principles, tend to be reactive. They react when things happen. They don't seem to have a strategy of moving forward with this beautiful agenda that they have of bringing about equality in the world, of promoting equality, not just in America, but globally. And yet, when something like this is happening, they're actually caught off guard. Dude, Mitch McConnell has been working. He has been plotting and scheming. And when the time is right, because it talks about time, it talks about how he timed his intervention so that he could achieve his goal. It was all about timing. So it means this is somebody who put good thought into his plan and put it on paper and looked at it and re-looked at it. Because now the entire, Democratic Party, was totally undone with this situation. And so truth has not prevailed. And it's not because it's not truth, but it's because those who are standing for truth are lazy. They are lazy to do their work, their due diligence. And I think that's an important lesson for us to learn. We need to be serious about God's work. Because otherwise the enemy, he has been plotting this forever, and his steps are well calculated. So it's a failure of the Democratic Party that this even happened. But maybe it's not a strategy that the right people can adopt, a strategy of being scheming and plotting behind the scenes. But yeah, maybe it's because the enemy can use those strategies that they get away with all the things that they do. But thanks for the comment. Oh, did also ask something. Okay, let's close in prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you for leading us and thank you for the life that you've given us. Thank you for the message and for the light that is shining so that we can see where our feet are and so that we can be certain of the ground on which we are standing and be confident to bring others to where we are. May you continue to grant us your grace as we continue to study these things, as you continue to reveal them to us. Thank you, Lord, for hearing our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.